Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Living Astrology with Janet Hickox. Grab your cup of coffee or your tea. I got one of my new cups here. Sit back and relax, and let's chat about what is happening in the stars above our heads, in the sky above our heads, and talk about today some human design and also the gene keys. We are going to dive into our Wisdom Keepers Inner Guidebook written by Rosie Aronson and talk more about the placement of the Earth, as that is where the lunar eclipse will be occurring as we get into Friday's energy. So everybody needs to know, how is that going to affect them and what it is that we can take away as a message through the gene keys and through human design. Today, we are really lucky, as in today the moon moved into the sign of Gemini, one of my favorite placements for the moon, where our emotions are all keyed up into how it is that we communicate with one another. We feel more animated, we feel more focused on the social aspects of our lives. This might be a day where people spend more time on Facebook or Instagram or in talking in the office, sharing information, ideas, etc. It's kind of a conversationalist kind of day, and the moon will be here in Gemini for the entire day, as well as I think for the next 2 days, really, the 8th and the 9th, we shift out early in the morning. And hold on, grabbing my thing here. I've got too many things to talk about in the mornings anymore, so I have all these different sheets of information that help me to make sure I'm staying on track and sharing what's out there for everybody. So today, Moon in Gemini, what can we expect besides conversation? Well, this is a very social placement for the moon, so that's where we get to be in many different situations. We crave sort of that variety today, as we want to be able to do many different things, have many different conversations. It might be a day where it's kind of hard for us to focus on one thing. We might be kind of more scattered in our focus. So one of the things that we want to watch out for, one of the things that we watch out for with Gemini energy anyway, is that frazzled mind and the scattering of our energies. I can even feel it within me. Of course, I am a Gemini, but I can almost feel it when the moon moves into Gemini, because I feel like I just want to keep talking and talking and talking, and I do that on a natural basis. So when the moon moves into Gemini, it's just that much more pronounced for me. Now, also, when the moon is in Gemini, we become more flexible mentally. It is a mental sign. It is an air sign. So all of our air signs in some way show us mental flexibility. With Gemini, the mental flexibility is in the ability to use logic to see how 1 + 1 is 2 and how 2 + 2 is 4, etc. Seeing things in a way that makes sense logically. Now, it doesn't mean that a Gemini moon doesn't allow for creativity, because there is a lot of creativity in the sign as well, but it's more mental creativity. So thinking in new ways, using your mind in new ways. There's one of the impacts that I think happens with the moon in Gemini is that we gain sort of an ability to see things dimensionally, or to engage our minds dimensionally. So we're not so single-minded. It's more like we can see all sides of things, a sort of Libra feel, where Libra is balancing the scales of justice and seeing both sides and weighing them equally. But Gemini dimensionality is like all in one thought, being able to see the full scope of which is happening. So you can take an idea, and in a quick second, you are making all of these different connections with that thought or with that idea or that inspiration. So it is a very clever placement for the moon, and is also somewhat analytical. It's a second only to Virgo energy in the ability to analyze data quickly, or ideas quickly, or be inspired by what you see in terms of ideas and new ways of being or new ways of doing things. Now, Gemini is also a placement when the moon is here. We want to move our bodies. right? My hands are moving. I'm talking with my hands. I'm suddenly Italiano. And we are on the move when the moon is in Gemini, whether we're in our cars and driving, doing errands, moving from one thing to another, our minds moving from one thing to another. We might have a lot of different projects today. There's a sort of variety or a sampling, if you will, of the energies. It's like being at a mental buffet, right? Where you can, sample all of the different ideas and different ways of thinking and ways of doing things today. And communication, of course, also the territory that Gemini encompasses. So we have the social media bugs where we have all of those different ways that we can reach out and connect with one another. I fully expect that Twitter will be a buzz today with all kinds of things, or Facebook ideas, etc. The internet also comes under the auspices of Gemini, at least in terms of the way that we use it to communicate with one another through email or social medias, etc. Phones, right? Our telephones, we don't talk much on the phones anymore. At least the younger people, I can call my grandchildren and they'll text me back and not answer the phone. It's too funny. But they'll, the younger people are more into the texting and to the different ways that they, Snapchat and TikTok and all of that. Where us that are sort of in the middle here, we still remember when our telephones were our communication connection. So often instead of texting, I'll just pick up and call. And some of you that are at the older end of the spectrum are having, to use the phone in a way that we used to use in the old days, right? Which is if you wanted to speak to somebody, you called them and not text them. It's kind of funny the way that things have evolved just in our own lifetimes. If you think back to when you were a kid, depending on how old you are now. But when I was a kid, it was all about the telephone. And as a teenager, I spent hours on the telephone to the point where I ended up getting my own special line in my bedroom so that I could talk to my friends without tying up the line for everybody else in the house. And then, of course, that evolves later into other ways of communicating, very much driven by Gemini energy. A couple things to watch out for: losing focus, right? Scattered energy with Gemini moon means sometimes that you are having difficulty staying on topic. You might be dancing around, moving from one thing to another. It's almost like these little sparks happen where your mind suddenly sees something that is connected to something else and you move on to that topic, and then that topic takes you to another one. I call it pulling threads, but for some people that can lead to scattered or frazzled mind. So we'll want to maybe take some time today to step outside if you can, or ground yourself in some way, because the activity of the mind and communication can frazzle some people's nerves. All right, so let's say a quick good morning to people. I am seeing Amy out there. Rebecca, good morning. Mimi, good morning. Debbie Hedden, nice to see you out there. And Amy Moore says good morning. Mimi says good morning. Happy New Year from Debbie Hedden. She says she actually gets to watch today. Happy New Year to you. Terry Levanis, good morning. Nice to see you all out there. Today, I'm going to talk a bit about human design. And that's because there's something interesting happening this week in our human designs that I think we need to really understand in order to be able to work with these energies as we come up to Jupiter opposing the node tomorrow, Mercury conjunct the sun the day after, and then the lunar eclipse on Friday. And then Saturday and Sunday, we have that momentous time of Saturn, Pluto, Mercury, all joining up at the 22 degrees of Capricorn for that major conjunction that we've been, eyeing since January of last year, or maybe even before that. So I want to take a look at that in the words of human design and in the words of the gene keys. So we may spend more time actually in that arena than in astrology for the next few days. So first of all, let's look at the centers in your human design chart. And I'm going to highlight these centers that I'm going to talk about today in yellow. Hopefully you guys can see them. So the difference, there are 9 energy centers in your human design. I hope you guys can see those that I just highlighted yellow. One is the head center, the very top center, and then the bottom center, which is called the root center. So we have the root and we have the head. The head center Notice how it sort of traverses both the human body, or the outline of the human body, but it's also connected to the ether or to spirit. It is the only center. The rest of the centers are very much enclosed or housed within the body. But the head center straddles both the head, or the physical, as well as the mental or the spiritual realms. So it's connected to both. And as such, then, this is a center where we can become very inspired. But we have to be careful here, because the inspiration is often coming from the collective or from the people that are around us, and are not genuinely our own inspiring thoughts. It also depends on how your head is defined in your own personal human design chart. So this might be the next couple days. You might actually want to have your own human design chart handy, and that way you can, kind of relate this information to what's happening for you personally. So if you have an open head, if it's open, it's a white center. It might have some lines hanging down from it that are colored in, but if it doesn't connect down to the ajna, then it's open. Literally about 50 to 60% of you have an open head center. So I would say just about half and half, maybe just a little bit more. And the open head center then is open to receiving, like a radar dish, receiving inspiration from the collective, or from the heavens above, from the stream of consciousness that moves into the planet, even, from the ethers. But does that mean then that you're meant to take action on every idea or inspiration that comes in? That's the hard part here, because the tendency is that we want to be engaged in everything. Like, we have this great idea and we decide that we're going to leap onto it and do something new, do something exciting, but yet it may not be the correct thing for you. And that is because we're so used to, in this world, the words "just do it," right? Just do it, that Nike swish, where if it's an idea and we're inspired, then shouldn't we just take action? Right? So the open head has a lot of issues around wanting to take action, to leap into or out of things prematurely. Now, if you have a defined head, defined meaning it would be colored in and it would be yellow. And about, again, 50 to 45 to 50% of you have that colored in. Then you have very specific things that are inspiring to you, or that you will take action on when inspired. You are the ones that transmit inspiration to those who have the open center, and the open center is taking in that inspiration and then amplifying it and rebroadcasting it. So often the open centered head is the one that is super inspired. Now you can see how this plays out when you're, if, for example, if you ever gone to a convention, let's say a network marketing kind of convention, right? Maybe doTERRA oils or Young Living or something like that. And you get in a room with all these people who are hyped up about this product or this service. And they're just like, yes, yes, right? The rah-rah people. And those of you with an open center take all that in, and you're the ones that in that split second decide, yes, this is what I want. You join up, and later you're like, oh my God, what did I do? Right? 3 days later, all of that inspiration, maybe even a day later, all that inspiration is gone. Why? Because the people who were doing the inspiring that you were taking in are no longer there. And now you're back to just that open center. So that open center then can be a problem, and the defined center less of a problem, but you can still become overly inspired by things and take action from the head, and it is absolutely not the place that you want to take action from. And here's why. 2 reasons why. 1, the head center, the very top center there, is a pressure center. There are 2 pressure centers in the human design template. One is the head, and the next one is the root. So these 2 pressure centers, one at the top, like compressing you from the top, and the other one pressuring you from the bottom, like compressing, right? So these pressure centers cause you sort of this dis-ease, or this unease, or dissatisfaction. A lot of the shadowy energies that we have in our human design or in our gene keys come from the pressure to be something that you're not. In the head center, The pressure is to answer questions. Why? How? Can you prove it? What? So those major questions of importance might not even be your own questions. If you have an open head center, likely you're being pressured to answer the question. So you might have this great idea, and maybe it is correct for you to take action on. You've run it through your authority. It's, you've waded through your type, and now it's time to take action. But now the head is being pressured to answer questions like, well, how are you going to do that? And can you prove it to me that this is the correct way to do that? So the pressure here is always to try to answer those questions. And it can cause you to take action then against your type or your strategy or your authority because of the pressure to answer that question. Now there's the 3 gates that come down from that head center. This is another reason why we don't make decisions from the head, because the energy in those gates is confusion, wonderment, and the third one is doubt and suspicion. Now, they play a role, right? It's not doubt and suspicion about your own motives or about who you are or about why you want to do something. It's doubt and suspicion using discernment in order to determine what is correct for you. And the gate 61, which is the middle one, is about the awe and wonder and magic of the universe, instead of always defaulting to the rational, logical mind, right? There's this being able to see the cosmos in a bigger picture, in a bigger way, sort of that idea of that, isn't this an awe-inspiring place? You know, when you stand at the edge of the Grand Canyon and you look out and you just are in awe of the power and the wonder and of how did this happen, and we become inspired by that, right? So awe and wonderment and magical thinking here juxtaposed against that need that we have to be rational. And then gate 64, the first or the very last gate of the entire design, human design or gene key system, in its raw form is the gate of confusion. And here's where we are always interminably trying to answer the question, how? And how is that going to happen? And how can you make that happen? How am I supposed to do that? So the how energy here, or the question how, takes away the awe, takes away the wonderment, takes away the magic as you try to control how things are going to happen, when things are going to happen, and the steps that you're going to take to get there. So the confusion that happens here is because it's part of the head center. It isn't, there's no energy here of doing. It's all just thinking. It's all up in the head, and it's all based on a pressure to answer questions that may not be your own, right? Isn't that interesting, right? Pressure center, answering questions that might not be your own. So when you have a great idea and you say to a friend, hey, this is my great idea and this is what I'm going to do, the first question a lot of other people are going to ask, and even if they're not asking it in words, they're thinking it, well, how is she going to do that? Right? How is she going to make that happen? And even if they're not asking it outright and you have an open head, you may be pressured to try to answer those unasked questions. So we have to be very careful with the head. We want to be inspired. We want to be excited. We want to entertain ideas, but we don't want to take action on those ideas based solely in that inspiration. Right? We got to use our body. We got to get that energy from the idea down into the body. Now let's talk about the other center, the other end. So the root center. The root center is the very bottom center, and it is also a pressure center. And look, you have 4, 5, you have 8 gates, 9 gates. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 gates on the root center. You only had 3 up in the head, so the pressure to answer those questions of how and when and what and can you prove it, they meet down there at the bottom, which is the gate, which is the center for impulse, right? The impulsive action. It is an impulse to do. So the pressure in the root center is all about doing. Here is where we start to confuse human being with human doing, because all of the energies in the root center pressure us to move out and up Remember the throat center right here? The throat center is the gearbox in your human design. So when ideally what we want to do is get all the energy from the lower body up to the throat and the upper body down to the throat, because the gearbox here is where things can get done. This is the gate. This is the center for communication. This is the center for manifestation, bringing things to life, right? Creative energy from below gets pushed up to the throat to be made manifest. Energy from the ideas and the inspiration meet up with the throat to become manifest. So we can take this system apart and we can look at these pieces, but it operates as one giant whole, right? You're whole. And by the way, before you ask this question, we all have all of the human design. You're not missing anything. You're just set up differently than I am set up, than the next person is set up, and so on, right? Based on your birth date, birth time, birthplace. So that doesn't take away, if you have an open head, it doesn't mean you don't have inspiration. It doesn't mean that you don't have ideas. It means that you're working with that energy differently than, say, your husband, wife's brother, sister, mother who has it defined, right? So it's just a different way of expression. It doesn't mean you're lacking anything. So at the root center, then, we have the root center with the energy for joy and vitality or bliss. We have fight, right? Struggle. We have the energy of ambition and drive, which is being triggered this week with the sun sitting at the gate 54. We have the gate 53 moving up toward the sacral, which is about new beginnings or starting something, or I call it the gate of expansion often, because this is really where the pressure to expand our lives, to expand our reach in the world happens. We have gate 60, which is transformation, gate 52, which is restraint, right? The quiet restraint. And then sensitivity, provocation, and creativity or imagination or fantasy that are all pressuring us to move out in different directions, up through the sacral, over toward the emotional center, or over toward the spleen. And so the root center is that pressure to do, to go out and prosper, to go out and be something, to make something of your life. So both of these centers then, if they're open, the pressure is from outside of you. And what happens in the root center often is a stress builds up. So people who have the open root center don't handle stress very well, right? They're taking in not only their own inner stress, but remember, this is a center that takes in the energy from around it, amplifies it, and tries to rebroadcast that energy. So people with an open root center are the ones with the to-do list that never gets any shorter, that is working to get free of that list, but they never get free, right? So they're maybe task oriented. They get up early in the morning and they have this list of things, and as soon as they get that done, then they're going to go for a walk or they're going to sit and read a book. But unfortunately for them, they're taking in the pressure from all around them to keep doing, and they don't know when to say enough is enough, right? So it can be very complex in this root center, where people who have it defined are inadvertently pressuring those that have it open to do more. So I see this happening in my own household all the time. I have a defined root center. My husband has an open root center. And I'll be sitting down and I'll say, hey, let's go to the store later, or let's go take a walk. And he'll be suddenly, but I'm doing something right now. And I'm like, I didn't say we had to go do this right now, right? He feels the pressure to stop what he's doing and to do something else. So we're always working with this kind of pressure that can create stress for some people, that other people who have it defined don't have. They have the mechanism to handle the stress, where the people with it open don't always have the right mechanism. So it can be a place of adrenal burnout, of a stress burnout. So we want to be very careful with the root center. Now, why did I want to bring all this up to you today? I wanted to bring this up to you today because as we move through learning about what to expect with the lunar eclipse coming up on Friday, we have to understand that the gate 53, which is on the root center, a pressure center, is part of the eclipse. that the gate 54 on the root center is also in the eclipse. Now, an eclipse is already a high pressure situation, right? It's already a big portal, and this is a completion portal. And yet the pressure is to start something new. So we have the pressure of ambition and goals and dreams and the beginning of something and expanding. We want to expand outward, but this is actually a part of completion. So we have to be able to let go of something, complete something, in order to be able to move more fully into whatever comes up new. Whatever it is that you're trying to do for 2020, for example, is following on the heels of completion for 2019. So that means at this particular juncture of time, while we may want to, or we feel the pressure to engage in and expand into the new territory of 2020, we still have some 2019 stuff hanging around, right? So we have expansion that we want to do through initiating or beginning something. But the lunar eclipse here is also reminding us that we have to do our homework before we can leap into something, right? The pressure is to leap, the pressure is to do, but we might not be done yet. So we have to really do a really good job of evaluating ourselves at this point in time. Use this energy all of this week to evaluate, where are you? And are you ready to embrace something new? Or do you still have something you need to complete before you can do that, right? We don't want to leap into anything, because we could also then have to leap back out. And then we get this flip-flopping, right? This flip-flopping energy, and then we never really accomplish anything, or we feel frustrated, or we feel like we have low self-esteem or self-worth because we're beating ourselves up for not being able to complete or to, really get anything off the ground. So be real careful with this. So the question you might be asking yourself right now is, what do you need to complete to be ready for what's next? Another way to put that is, what do I need to let go of in order to be able to move forward? What do I have to release in order to move on? And it might be an emotion. It might be a thought. It might be a way of doing things. It might be one of those, sacred cows, the sacred cows, the ones that we hold on to, that we just say, there's no way that I'm ever going to move forward without this. And then we find out, I can't move forward with this. So we might have to let go, right? And the other big news here isn't that the lunar eclipse is pressuring us in the root center to do and to expand, but we're also being challenged at the top by the gate 61, where on Sunday, Saturn, Pluto, Mercury are all going to be in a conjunction here, and the sun not far behind. The sun at 21 degrees while the rest of them are at 22 degrees. And that pressure then on the gate 61 can induce psychosis, right? The psychosis of doing based on on rational or logical thinking. And it's a bit scary to think of psychosis as a shadow energy that's so prevalent on the planet. And it should be forcing all of us to sort of look within and see, where is it that we have our own personal psychoses going on? Where are you personally insane? Because we all are somewhere, right? What are we pushing up against the brick wall, trying to and expecting a new outcome based on doing things the old way? And you can see this so clearly in the outer world as the old guard is pushing up against the new, right? They're wanting the old wants to hold sway while the new is forcing a change. And where they meet is where psychosis lives, right? Where they meet, where we keep trying to do things the old way, where we refuse to see that the world has changed and it's butting up against. So we get this patriarchy butting up against the new idea of the balance with the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And we get the old older generations of people that don't understand the newer generations, and they butt up against one another. And in that middle, that place where they meet is where psychosis can be induced, right? Where we just keep trying and trying to make America great again. And it isn't going to happen in the same way that we thought it did in the 50s and the 60s. It just isn't there anymore. The energy of the past is in the past. What we have to do is take the best of all that and bring it forward and join it to the best of the new, or what could be. So that psychosis lives right there in the middle. It's resistance, right? That resistance energy, the resistance to moving forward, right? Trying to hold us to an old way of being and refusing to see that there's a new world. And that new world is crashing into us at super light speed right now. Super light speed through all of 2020. And when we get into next year, we are in this new energy. We're into that Aquarian age. It's like almost landing 2 feet in the age of Aquarius. And so we're going to see, consequently, then a lot of things changing as we're moving forward into this year. And this particular eclipse may be a doozy, right? We already saw what the solar eclipse wrought with the planet Mars moving into Sagittarius, where the clash of ideologies creates an explosion, if you will, in that outer world, with the assassination of the Iranian defense general, whatever he was. And now, yesterday in listening to the news, I heard that someone in Iran, or Iran's leaders, gave out a list of all of the properties that Trump owns around the world, almost like an open invitation for an attack. So we have some craziness, right? We have some crazy things. And we can't continually decide to go to war or to bomb or to attack a country just because their ideologies don't meet up with ours. It's psychosis, right? You can't keep meeting war with war. And I'm not saying that the things that they've done to us in this country are right or wrong, but you can't keep meeting it with the same force, because you get the same reaction, right? It leads to more war, right? It leads to more destruction. Where do we stop? Do we stop at a nuclear war where we've blown up everything? I mean, that's the thinking, and that's the psychosis here. It doesn't leave room for forgiveness. It doesn't leave room for diplomacy. It doesn't leave room for, maybe we were wrong somewhere. Maybe we've, engendered ideologies that are harmful to others, to other nations. Maybe those other nations and their ideologies that trigger so much fear within our country that we get blinded by the psychosis. So it goes on until we choose something different. And lest you think you don't have a choice in all of this, you do. You have a voice, right? You have a voice. You have opportunities to use your voice, your dollars, in ways that support moving out of that psychosis and moving into a different way of being. And I suggest we do it sooner rather than later, because cooler heads need to prevail. Cooler heads need to prevail. We need to look, it's almost like my favorite picture of that giraffe with his head upside down, right? You got to turn your head sometimes and see things from a different perspective, or else you keep tying in to that psychosis. And it's so powerful now. When you start adding up the number of planets that will be sitting at this gate, 61, where the shadow is psychosis, it's incredible the amount of pressure that we're going to be under, because it's a pressure center. It's the head center. And we have to be inspired to be different, to do things differently, to find creative solutions to old problems. We can't just keep meeting it up with force and with war or with bombings or assassinations. It just doesn't make sense. If we were coming into this planet today, fully formed, fully adulted, without all of the entrainment of thought process, the conditioning, if we were just standing out there, we would be going, oh my God, this is a planet of madness. These people are all mad, crazy. Because we can't see it, because we're in the midst of it often, until someone brings it up and you go, yes, we're crazy. And we need to do something differently here. And so luckily we have mad skills here. We have ways to get out of the madness. In the gate 61, we can go into inspiration, right? That's the gift level. Forget going to sanctity, let's just go to inspiration. What can we do and how can we take inspired action? How can we be inspired to engage the world in a different level, right? We even know from the science side of things that you can't solve a problem from the level with which it was created or the level from which it was created. We have to look at things differently. We have to. Here's your opportunity, right? This is the week. This is the week, the crescendo point where we choose. We either choose to go down the same road we've always gone down, creating more psychosis, or we choose to see things differently, to behave differently, to ask more of ourselves and of the world, of the nation, of our communities, right? Okay, off the soapbox now. Let's see, how's everybody thinking about all of this stuff? Marissa, good morning to you too. Christine, good morning. And Dusa, good morning. Linda Marie, good morning. Gail, good morning. Laura, good morning. Amy says, use energy and energy almanac. Was so happy to start using on January 1st. I used the energy almanac about 100 times yesterday as I was setting up the schedule of webinars for the membership group for the next year. And as I was doing that, I thought, I've already done all this work, right? I've already done all this. I wrote this back in May. So I got the book out and I just started using those themes that were there. So it's very powerful. And also, I sent out to all of you who went to the Astrology of 2020 webinar, those of you who are in the membership, all of you got the invitation to request a free 2020 personalized astrological calendar, and maybe 5 or 6 of you requested that of me. It's really surprising. It was free. So I'm going to open it up for you guys for another few days. If you did not get your free astrological personalized calendar for 2020, reach out, Janet at living-astrology.com to get yours. And some of you who got yours, I am getting ready to do a video. I'll probably try to do it today even, letting you know how to best use that tool. And anyway, so that's just sort of an aside, but I was really surprised. I thought I was going to be inundated. I was ready, and barely anybody requested that. So talk about shock and awe. So if you still are interested, let me know today, tomorrow, through Friday, and I will be happy to send that to you. And it's not just one report, it's a timeline report daily for the 12 months of 2020, as well as the same calendar, this calendar that I use on a daily basis to determine what's happening. Well, that light's in your way. But what I do is this is set up for my chart. So it also holds my personal transits for the day, as well as the transits that are happening for everybody for the day. So I set this up for 12 months for you personally, for where you live, based on your chart. So you get these, and you get your dailies and your chart free. But hardly any of you took me up on it. So now I'm going to ask for it, right? So now I'm saying you guys have till Friday to request that of me, and I can get that out to you. It doesn't take me too long to do a report, maybe 10 minutes. So let me know. All right. Where was I going before I got on that soapbox? Oh, okay. So I was going through the comments. Gail says, spot on today for me. Thank you. You're welcome. And Rebecca, can you speak about Uranus turning direct as well in terms of human design? I can, and that's actually a really good question too, Rebecca, because Uranus has been sort of an outlier so far in all of this year. It's in Taurus. It's in early degrees of Taurus. The big action is being taken place at the end of Capricorn. So while they're both in Earth signs, the action is taking place in the latter degrees while Uranus is in the early degrees. So he's kind of in the background. I think he's already stirred the pot, right? He's already done that work. And so now he's just holding space for us to come to our senses. But Uranus turned retrograde in August 12th, I believe it was. And when a planet like Uranus turns retrograde, hold on, I forgot to silence my phone. It takes all of that revolutionary energy, that rebellious energy, that energy of change, and moves it inward. So for the last several months, we've all been moving through changes on the inner world. You might have noticed this because maybe triggers were occurring in your outer world that caused you to go within and to look at, well, what's my part in all of this, and how do I need to change in order to be able to move forward, etc. So Uranus, all during this period of time, has been sitting at the gate 27. And the gate 27, let me circle it here for you, is on the sacral. So it's in the energy of doing, and it's right here, and it's heading out toward the spleen. And it is the gate of caring, nurturing, feeding, teaching, clothing, taking care of the family, the tribe, the community. And so Uranus has really been a revolutionary force for us to look at how it is we take care of one another in a country, in a community, in a family, from the macro down to the micro. How are we taking care of one another? And or ourselves even, right? The 27 is a very nurturing gate. That whole channel, by the way, the 27 and where it meets up at the gate 50 over here, where it meets up, this channel is a distinctly feminine channel. And so we have the feminine energy rising on how we care for one another. So how do we feed our children? And it's not just how do we feed them or are they fed? It's are we giving them nutritious food? So a lot of the themes around the gate 27 are around how we care for one another. So it turns direct on Friday at literally about 4 hours after the eclipse. So the next questions then become, in terms of how are we changing, how are we caring for one another? How are we caring for the planet? We might see themes start to develop around new technologies with helping to clean the atmosphere, water. I know there's just been this terrible assault by the Trump administration on the environmental protections, and how is that going to play out, as corporations are not having to be as stringently affected by laws that protect the environment. So there's a lot of focus then that Uranus is bringing us in new technologies that are about how we care for one another, how we teach one another. So we might hear educational news. We might see more about how we grow food, about how we clean the water, about how we clean the planet, about how we care for the animal world, how we live in peace and prosperity with all, as opposed to being greedy. So the gate 27, if we look at it through the gene keys, and I'm just going to pull that up. I know I posted this once upon a time for everybody, and I think it might still be available out there. If not, I can post this again. The little cheat sheet. This is actually the back inner page of the Gene Keys book by Richard Rudd. So you've got a little cheat sheet here of all of the gates and the shadow, the gift, and the siddhi. So the gate 27 is the gate of selfishness in the shadow, altruism in the gift, and selflessness in the highest expression. So you get a kind of read on Uranus, and his revolutionary impulse for the next several months is really on how it is that we take care of one another. Here's the bigger question maybe. What kind of world are we leaving our children? What kind of world are we leaving our grandchildren? Because if we don't take care of the problems now, we're just passing it on. Pass it. You remember the game when you were a kid, pass it down and don't return it? That's kind of the mentality we've had, this sort of selfishness. Well, this benefits me and I don't really care about what comes next. But that's limited thinking. That's wrong way thinking. We have to become more altruistic. What can we do to help support our younger generations in having a world that is valuable, right? That holds value for them. And so that's a bigger energy that is really working in the background. And I do believe for the most of the year, Uranus kind of sticks in that. And we're going to talk more about these outer planets, Pluto, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Jupiter, as we get into the 2020 human design year, because the outer planets really drive the bigger picture things that are happening, where the inner planets are really focusing more on you personally. I know that's kind of a roundabout way to answer that question for you, Rebecca, but Uranus is not necessarily close enough degree-wise to affect the lunar eclipse, because it's happening at the 20-degree mark, where Uranus is only at 2 degrees. But it is in the background really affecting how we take care of one another and how we take care of the planet, how we take care of the universe as we even begin to spread out, as we begin to become a space-faring nation or world, where we begin to move outward. Like, it seems like every country just about has some plan or has already sent out some kind of space mission to, you know, an asteroid or to Mars or to the moon. And you know, we're really becoming more space focused. So you know what happens when that happens. We take the same values that we have here on the earth and we apply them to whatever we find out there in space. And if we are being greedy and selfish and we go out there in the world, then our whole or out into the universe, our whole purpose is about what can we get from an asteroid, from the moon? What kind of resources are there that we can, you know, grab onto and bring in? So the space race is really about he who gets there first has control over all of the resources. And if we don't change that mindset now, then all of that same energy takes and moves outward into space. I don't even want to be alive to know how that affects. So we have to be able, you know, it's not like just because we go to a new planet that we're going to do things differently. Unless we change what we do here, our expansion outward doesn't hold any hope for change, right? So we have to clean up our own backyard, or we end up messing up other backyards. We have to change the habits, in other words. Okay. Rebecca says, I'm having goosebumps. Everything you're saying is so real. It is real. It's a conversation we have to have. It's not a fun conversation per se, but it's not that difficult for us to really see where we could go, right? Where we could go in the high. I mean, we've already experienced all this low stuff. Wouldn't you rather just like look at the high end of something now and see how we could get there? And, you know, there's just so much that we could be excited for if we can get out of the psychosis of where we've been. Marissa, excited for the video on how to use the personal astrological calendar. Exactly. It's going to be huge, because some of you are probably looking at that going, oh no, what does all that mean? So I will definitely do that for you. And of course, a lot of this is about your ability to learn while we do these morning shows as well. So having them as tools to help you understand more, even if right now it's all confusing and you don't get it, it's okay, because eventually you will start to make these connections. These are tools to help you make those connections. And Debbie Hedden missed it, and I do want one. Email me with what you need to email me with. Let me reframe this. Is don't assume that I have your birth information. Send me your birth date, time, and place as close as you can to the time. But I also need where you live now, because your birthplace may not be where you live now. And I need that in order to get you a calendar that is clearly reflective of the time zone that you're in. So for those of you who hop around a lot, or, you know, move from place to place, where's home? And that would be the time zone that I will set it for. Christine Erickson, same thing. Email me, let me know what your birth date, birth time, birthplace, and where do you live now. Just city and country, or city and state if you're in the US. And Rebecca, good. Marissa, I am in sync with Uranus and how I take care of myself and family, defined gate 2750. So the whole channel 2750 is really about how you teach your values. So literally that channel and I think I've said this before, really that channel, which is a tribal energy. Tribal meaning it's going to take it to our very way that we connect with one another in families, in communities or tribes, and in the nation, as well as in countries or continents, etc. That tribal energy is about transmitting values that support the tribe. The fear on the one side, if you have gate 50, is that you're going to fail in your responsibility to your family. So you're uber conscious about what you teach and how you do it, and you may show up and try to control situations with your family out of a fear that you're going to fail somehow. On the other end, the gate 27 is the one that is the repository of the values. And it's always been through history until more modern history that it was the divine feminine, the women of the tribe, that dictated the values, that dictated what we will teach and how we will be together, right? That everybody will be fed, everybody will be educated, everybody will have clothes, that everybody will have a roof over their head, that will support one another when a barn burns down and rebuild a barn. And it was the divine masculine that made it so. You know, Jean-Luc Picard, make it so. So the masculine does the feminine's bidding in a way. I mean, you could look at it like that, because it's the divine feminine that has charge of taking care, of nurturing, of feeding, clothing, housing, teaching, etc. And it is the masculine that does the protection, that sets the stage for that to be able to happen, for the progeny to be able to move forward. That has not happened on this planet in a while, right? Right now, it's the masculine energy that's proclaiming war, that's destroying, that's undermining. There's no protection going on in the masculine. I mean, I don't want to say that, because there are places where the masculine energy is coming into play in its right and purposeful arena, as well as the feminine. But we've got it sort of turned upside down in a lot of the Western cultures. We got to do better. We've got to do better. We've got to say, women, we have to say, the feminine has to demand that XYZ, and masculine, go out and do that. Protect us from, protect our children, protect our heritage, right? Protect our values. But the feminine has to come and really claim what those values are, and sort of say, it's not okay to have water that is damaged. It's not okay to have air that we can't breathe. It's not okay to keep burning fossil fuels that create a global warming effect, because then our children don't have a planet to live on, where they can grow food or they can live in harmony with nature. So we have a lot of work to do, but we can do it by starting personally and engaging ourselves at that level. Okay, Bob, good morning. Good to see you from Coffee. Anyone? I have my coffee right here because it's early morning for me. And Debbie says, thank you. Londa, good morning. Matriarchy rocks. Yes, it does. And so does patriarchy in its proper balance with matriarchy, right? I'm not bashing the masculine. I'm not bashing patriarchy exactly, because matriarchy gone wrong could have the same effect, only in the opposite direction. What we need is a balance. Everybody in their right and perfect place doing their right and perfect jobs, right? Correct? And it's not meaning that men have to do this and women have to do this. It's not gender related at all. It's the energy of that, of the masculine. It's the energy of the feminine. It could be man or woman doing any one of these, but we have to bring those energies into balance. That's basically what I'm saying. All right. So I think, unless anybody has other questions, that I am done. There's a couple of side little notes that I had written down here today. Let me get through those in the last 5 minutes that I can be here with you today. There is a Mars and Uranus dance moving through the atmosphere today that could be a little bit scritchy, a little bit annoying and irritating, and that's because Mars is in an inconjunct to Uranus. Remember, our Mars has just moved into Sagittarius, fire, and is sitting at the 2.5 degrees of the fire sign Sagittarius. And then Uranus is in an earth sign, Taurus, about the same degree, and that is an inconjunct. An inconjunct is a 150-degree relationship between the two planets, and that is in territory where they don't understand one another, right? The The energy of Mars in Sagittarius is idealistic and is very much optimistic and is self-righteous in a way, while Uranus is given more qualities of earthiness and being practical in the application of ideas, where Mars is a little bit of a maverick over here in Sag, while Uranus is more of a let's do it right kind of territory. So today we may find ourselves individually having to adjust our ideas, having to adjust our plans. Things may be in a process of needing to be recreated. So, for instance, maybe this project that you think you're, wanting to do, something you're meeting up with some kind of resistance perhaps, or some glaring hole that you missed before. So that can happen today, and it can be very frustrating or irritating. It's an irritant that we might be experiencing today. But luckily, you have all the tools that you need to be able to deal with this, right? You just need to step back, look in, see what might need to be adjusted, do those adjustments, and move forward. Right? That's how we deal with this kind of energy. Also today in the Pleiadian-Earth calendar, we are at 3 exploring, and exploring energy was Ben in the Mayan calendar, which was the reed. An interesting connotation here because the reed needs to be yielding but also strong. So it is sort of a call for us to not be rigid, to be flexible yet strong. So that means when we are looking at expanding into new territory, it's based on a solid footing, right? It has a foundation. And from that foundation, when we have a Mars in conjunct Uranus energy that's forcing us to bend or be flexible, that we are able to do that and we don't break, right? We don't break. We have to be flexible. We have to be able to move and flow with the energies without breaking. And this is a good day for traveling, for movement. We already saw that earlier in the broadcast with the moon in Gemini. The energy supports movement today, conversation today. So we are being tasked with the energy of releasing rigidness, or our harsh viewpoints, or being overly critical. So those are the things we need to release today. The energy of 3, which is the universal energy of the day, is about creating. Right? This is where we take 1 and we add 2 to it and we come up with creative energy. What more can we create? How can we create a better world, a better idea, a better widget, whatever it is that you're working on? How can we create something better? It's creative and it's movement energy. So that pretty much does it for me for the day. One last look at questions. Amy just says, thank you. Kathy, good morning. Heal yourself, heal the planet. I love that, Bob. That's a great way of looking at that. Heal yourself, heal the planet. I love it. I love it. Always bringing it back into you personally, right? And knowing that the outer world is only an out picturing of what's going on with you inside. So there we have it. And it's interesting to see what goes on in that outer world and how you react to it, etc. Maybe instead of reacting, responding with love to the energy of hate, responding with compassion to the energy of harm that's been done to an individual. And, remembering that all people have families, all people have same common goals, right? We all want to love and be loved. We all want to be able to prosper and have enough. And those are the common things, the common goals that we have, as well as many others. So lean into what we have in common and what we share as people, instead of yielding to the differences. All right. I like that too, Bob. If you are not creating your life, who is? Good one. All right, guys, that is it for me today. Have a wonderful day. Be flexible, be yielding, and be conversational. Don't be so fixed and rigid in your outlook or in your viewpoint that you break. That would be not a good thing. I will see you all tomorrow morning. Have a good one. Bye for now.